Hey there, I'm Adrienne, transformation coach and your go-to gal for navigating grief and loss. On this show, we're not shying away from tough conversations. Let's talk about how we're really feeling and how to show up in our lives even though so many hard things have happened. Loss and grief are tough topics, but witnessing each other's pain and getting really honest about what we want our lives to look like in our next chapter is the way forward. You're not broken. You deserve happiness. And even though you might not think that's possible, or even feel like your life is over, I'm here to show you that you can feel peace, purpose, and joy again. Let's talk about all things change, loss, and grief, and how to move forward so we can create a life we love. Welcome to the Living with Loss podcast. Hey there, welcome back to Living with Loss. Today, I wanted to share with you a practice that changed my life. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's kind of like a bold claim. It sure is, and it's true. This is a practice where when you first start hearing about it, you might think, something really hard just happened, and this is not for me. If something hard happened and you are in acute grief where you are tending to the pain, just trying to survive the day, that's where you're at right now, maybe this practice isn't for you. But I encourage you to listen anyways, because at some point in your grieving process, you'll start to come out of that haze and you'll look around and you'll wonder, what now? And this exercise will help you figure that out. So I titled this episode, Envision Your Life. I did this for a few reasons. When you envision something, you imagine as a future possibility, you visualize. This is about imagining and visualizing your life. The reason this is applicable in grief or after a difficult time is because when hard things happen, they turn our world upside down. They rearrange how we see ourselves, how we see our life, our dreams, our possibilities. They kind of turn things on its head. What you thought was your trajectory, what you thought was your path, that may no longer be the case. What happens is we become very disconnected from the big vision of our life because it's no longer what we thought it was going to be. The reason that this matters is because if you don't have a vision for your life, for where you're going, for what's next, you're just going to kind of meander aimlessly. You're not going to have focus. You're going to be distracted. One of the biggest things that people tell me they are struggling with when they're grieving is they don't have motivation. They don't have focus. They don't take joy in the things that they once did. They feel disconnected from their life. All of these things are true. Grief does disconnect us from our life because it entirely changes our orientation in our life. I like to think of grief as the emotion that you experience because of change or loss. It's that emotion that comes over you when the difficult thing happens. It's the waves of grief that you experience after, those emotions that come over you, that cascade over you. It's that emotional reaction. That's grief. Perfectly normal emotions, strong emotions, challenging emotions, really intense emotions, all of those things are super normal after your life has changed, after you've experienced a loss. That is normal. So grief, those emotions, that can't be ignored, and it shouldn't be ignored. And grief is a moment that occurs over and over and over again. We know our grief never ends. It changes. Our experience of the grief changes. Our relationship to the grief changes. Now, if you think of the word grieving, that's the process, not the moment of grief. That's the process of experiencing grief. Grieving, or the process of grief, it changes the experience of grief over time. And what's happening is you're adapting to this new world that you're living in after your change, after your loss. The book, The Grieving Brain, explains this really well in relation to neurology and how your brain fires and how essentially your world is mapped out in your mind, and grief changes that map. So the process of grieving is really trying to find your way in this new world. And you slowly build that new world and map it out through experiences. There's a point to all of this, I swear. The thing for me that changed everything is this process of envisioning my life. So I want to give you a backstory. I came out of a long-term relationship and I felt really lost. This was probably 2016, 2017 when I was really trying to figure this out. And this relationship was supposed to be the relationship. It was supposed to be the forever relationship. So with the end of a relationship comes the end of the life that you imagined that you would have with that person. And that's a loss that you're going to grieve. It's a loss that I grieved. And you can extend that idea into all different types of losses. Who you are in a different career, whether you chose a different career or you lost your job, that rearranges how you see your future. If you lost somebody, if they died, you have to exist in a world where they are no longer physically here. If you move to a new location, you have to build a new community. You're away from the people that you've always been around, your friends, your family. You have to orient yourself in this new world. However you previously saw your life, various changes or losses can totally upend that. So for me, when I discovered this practice or really started using it, it was around 2016, 2017. The first thing was my mind felt really chaotic. I felt like I couldn't get a hold of the way I was talking to myself. I couldn't get out of my mind. I'm just talking these situations over and over. It just was not a helpful way of being for me. So I got really curious about meditating. I hadn't meditated really before this, at least not as a consistent practice. I got curious about meditating to really get still and quiet and let whatever was inside of me bubble up. Not just the whirring noise of the inputs and the influence from outside and the ruminating. I wanted to get still and quiet to really allow my intuition, my knowing to speak to me. And people that don't meditate, sometimes before they have a meditation practice, they may think that meditating is about turning your thoughts off. It's really not. It's about noticing what thoughts come up and releasing them in the moment. I wanted to start there. I wanted to get curious about what's going on in my mind, what's going on inside. So that was the initial starting point. I coupled my meditation practice with journaling. It was just a reflection on what came up in meditation, the way that I felt, really listening to how my body felt as those thoughts were coming up, understanding that process of what was going on inside, whether it was the mental thoughts or it was the physical sensation. So I'd do some reflecting on that so I could understand, and really it was information gathering in a way. I then took the meditation and the journaling and I started a visualization process in my meditation. And it was what I wanted for my life in the form of feelings. Really, all that was I asked myself, how do I want to feel? I may not know the exact things that I want for my life, the exact things that I want in my life, or how I'm going to get any of them, but how do I want to feel? And Danielle Laporte has a book, The Desire Map, and I'm actually a licensed desire map facilitator, though that has moved into heart-centered content, but that practice of identifying the feeling, essentially, how do I want to feel? So I started really thinking about that. And this for me was before I discovered Desire Map, but that was one of the reasons I was so attracted to Desire Map afterwards, exploring this idea of how do I want to feel. And in my meditation, after I explored that a bit, I kind of had an idea of the feelings that I wanted to cultivate in my day-to-day. So I would imagine the energy of those feelings inside of me, flowing through me and beaming out of me. And it may sound crazy, but I imagined the feeling as energy going through me and out into the world. You're probably like, seriously, what's the point here, right? I want to tie this back to grief for a second before I go into the exact practice that changed everything. If grieving is the process of experiencing grief, I like to think about it as a learning process. It's learning who we are and how to be after we lost our person, our job, our dream, our expectations. And the way that we learn, especially as kids, is we try things. We see it, we mimic it, we try it. That's how we figured out what activities we liked, what games we liked, what hobbies we gravitated towards, which books we enjoyed reading, the kind of movies we wanted to see. We tried out different things and we learned our preferences. I understand this is a very oversimplification of learning, but stick with me. So again, I'm grieving this relationship and I'm trying to get a hold of what's going on inside. And then I take that practice and lean into the idea of the feeling that I want to feel and bringing that feeling into my day to day. So that led to creating a vision board. You might be rolling your eyes at this point. You're like, I know what a vision board is. A vision board is like, so 2010 and a New Year's Eve practice. Why are you talking about it? The vision board that I made is not just what pictures look pretty or seem like they'd be cool. No, this was a vision board that was about getting in touch with my knowing. It was a vision board that was born from really going inside and matching the feeling that I wanted to have with the feeling that I got from these images, from looking at them and from imagining myself in them. I used 4 guiding questions. How do I want to feel? That's where I started. Everything starts with how I want to feel. What do I want to create? What do I want to do? What do I want to have? So the 4 questions are, how do I want to feel? What do I want to create? What do I want to do? And what do I want to have? I used Pinterest. I made a Pinterest board. It's free, access to a lot of images. And I divided the board into separate sections. So each question had its own section. So I only added pictures to the board if I had a feeling inside where that picture felt right, meaning it felt like a true desire. In my coaching practice, I use this tool called the body compass with my clients, where you can use your body to determine if something feels right for you. But just super simplify that for the process of this podcast and for kind of digesting these concepts. Think of the game hot cold when you're young, right? If you're trying to find something, are you hot or are you cold? Warmer, where's the TV remote or whatever thing you hit, right? I think me and my brother used to play this. And then, you start to get close to it. You're warmer. Okay, you're hot, super hot, that kind of progression. And okay, I'm getting closer to the feeling. So if you think of this as a process of playing hot cold as you see these images, if it feels right inside, right? It feels like that's moving you to a true desire, to a true intention, that's an image you want to use. If it didn't meet that, where it was like a true feeling of a desire or intention, didn't feel right in my body, it wasn't pulling me towards the future I was trying to envision, that was not the image for me, kept going. I limited myself to 5 images per question. So when I started, I may have filled a few more to begin with, right? Like, that seems like it's a good idea. That resonates with me. I'm going to add it. But then at the end, when I really had the feeling state dialed in, I'd whittle it down. Is this really generating in my body what I want to feel? Does this feel like it captures the idea of whatever that feeling is? One of the big feelings that came up for me again and again was freedom of time, freedom of location. So images that didn't feel like they were fulfilling that idea for me, they weren't going on the board. Now I had more than one feeling, but that was one of the big ones for me at the time. So again, I used Pinterest at the time, but now I like to use Canva. In Canva, you can also create a free account. You have access to tons of images, and you can create like a separate image all within the same file. So you can kind of scroll between them. It's a really neat little thing. If you've never used Canva, it's a great way to do a vision board. So I had these 4 questions answered in the form of images. I didn't stop there. I asked, who do I have to become to live into this? Who do I have to become to live this life that I'm envisioning, that I'm imagining? How do I have to show up in my day to day to move towards that vision that I had? What does the person that's feeling these things, that's created this stuff, that's had these experiences, and has these things or feelings in their life day to day? What do they do? How do they exist? What are the actual tangible actions, habits, practices that this person does to live this life? And I wrote about it. I made lists. I got really into the weeds on this. And then I started doing those things. So, one of the ideas that I had was adventure. But for me at that time, adventure meant the combination of exploring a new place and challenging myself physically. And to me at that time, when I envisioned adventure, that's how I saw it. So, if I wanted to travel to a new place, I was going to anchor that trip in adventure. So, a physical challenge. I kayaked the Nepali coast. I've gone swimming off boats in Greece. I hiked on the Great Wall of China. I ran a half marathon in San Francisco. I have climbed the vertical feet of Everest in 4 different places now. I did the Dopey Challenge at Disney World. As I plan trips, which travel has always been super important to me, it's a way for me to get in touch with myself, to feel alive in the world. That travel was going to be anchored in adventure. And the way I envisioned that adventure playing out in my life was going to new places and experiencing a physical challenge. So, as I planned trips after creating that vision, the trips were planned around those physical adventures. What sounds cool? What do I want to do? And I still have a list of physical adventures that I would like to take on that are in exotic places. It's being open to how these things could present themselves. One of the things that was on my vision board, and I look at it, I have it saved, I still look at it, was a picture of a woman from behind in Santorini, and she was in an infinity pool overlooking the caldera. And you can see the whitewashed buildings and the blue domed roofs. And I went on a trip to Santorini in 2021. It wasn't like I must go on this trip. It was about a week and a half before my birthday, and I always take a trip over my birthday. And I was like, oh, I don't really have anything big planned. I was really trying to figure out what that was going to be. And I was thinking maybe a hiking trip. I randomly checked flights after an evening out, went to dinner, just to some different places. Like, where might I want to visit? South Africa, Italy, Greece. And I just checked flights to these random places. And there were round trip tickets to Santorini for $368. Round trip. Can't make this up. So I split my time, almost 2 weeks, between Santorini and Mykonos. And it was an amazing trip. It was incredible. There's a lot of hiking. There was a lot of being on the water, just sightseeing. It was absolutely beautiful. One of the most amazing culinary experiences of my life. And I wasn't actively trying to manifest Santorini. But the thing is, that image, there's something about the image that I put on that board, and I look at it now and I can see it. It's like, it's an image that conjures up freedom, adventure, possibility, travel, like all of these things in one. And the universe serves me up $300 round trip tickets to Greece. Are you kidding me? Years after I put that on my vision board. Say that's 2017. I went on that trip in 2021. That's amazing. That's incredible. And that's not the only thing that happened for. The Dopey Challenge was on there. The Dopey Challenge is nearly impossible to get into with Disney World. The tickets sell out in minutes. I happened to check. It was stuck in my head. Somebody had mentioned it. Again, this is years after. I think the first time I did the Dopey Challenge was 2022. And so I'm in 2021, and somebody mentioned Disney World or somebody mentioned the Dopey Challenge. And I was like, when does that even go on sale? And I looked at work on a random July day, and tickets were randomly open. So these tickets sold out months before. I didn't even know when they went on sale. It was dumb luck. I checked, And anyone that's tried to do Disney races, right, they sell out within minutes. And then occasionally, depending on, I don't really know what it depends on, maybe the allocation of charity bibs and what works out, what doesn't, not really sure on the logistics there, not going to pretend like I know, but they'll randomly, without announcement, drop some tickets here and there. And usually, if you monitor different groups or forums, if people see them, they'll throw it in the group. And then there's kind of a mad dash for that small, tiny release of additional tickets, and they sell out again in minutes. And just in that, on that day, in that moment, I looked and they were available and I bought them. And I didn't even know how difficult it was to get tickets to the Dobie Challenge until after I went to it and then had to wait in line or, in the queue, the virtual queue the following year to do it again because I had such an amazing time. All this to say that these were things that I put on this board years before that suddenly somebody said something, or I just was like, I wonder about this. And I look it up and the opportunity is there. Got to be open to it. The crazy thing is, if somebody was like, oh, I made this vision board and I manifested all this stuff, I'm like, stop with your nonsense. I do believe in manifesting, but I think there is this thing out there where it's, if you make a vision board, if you put it out into the world, you're just going to attract it. I think it's really important to first put the things on the vision board that are true to you. Put the things on the vision board that are true to you. They can't be somebody else's dream for their life. They can't be the things that you think should make a good life. They have to be real, your true desires. And the thing is with grief is that it changes everything you thought you knew. But this practice is an invitation to explore, to really go inside and see how you feel about things. You don't have to be overly attached to this thing that you create. You're playing with possibility. You're putting ideas out there. You're seeing how they feel in your body. You're wondering if you could see yourself in that image. Could you see yourself living into this image that you just chose? If your answer to that stuff is yes, follow the curiosity. That's the thing here. Like I said, grieving is kind of like this learning process. You're learning what your life is becoming after the thing that happened. The way to learn is to try and experiment. This is one way to really look within and see what piques your curiosity and follow it. If I could give you a singular piece of advice, aside from it needing to be like a true desire, right? It can't be like lukewarm about it and then throw it on the board and be like, oh, this will be cool. No, like you have to really feel that deep on the inside that that feels right for you. But that's not the thing I was going to say. I already said that. If I could say one more thing, don't get caught up in the how. Be open to the how. Have the vision for what you're creating in your life, right? Purpose of the vision board, you're envisioning, you're imagining this future possibility. You'll figure out the how by playing with possibility and staying open to opportunities. It doesn't mean waiting passively. It doesn't mean you, like I said, you made the vision board and now you're manifesting and everything's just gonna drop into your life and fly into your life, everything you wanted. No. Like I said, I actively figured out what I needed to do to be the person that lives the vision, and I incorporated those things into my everyday life. One of the things that was on there, like I said, was freedom. Freedom was a feeling I wanted to feel. At the time, I was working in a job where I worked a minimum of 10 hours a day. Most days, it was closer to 12 hours, sometimes even 16 hours. I was tied to a location, and that's not what I wanted. So there are quotes on there about entrepreneurship and building this authentic life, progress over perfection, start before you're ready. Those ideas showed up, whether in form of quote or the image inspired that thought in me. So I planted the seeds of eventually creating this coaching business. But if the idea was freedom and I knew I wanted to be independent of time and location, okay, well, what do I need to do that? Well, one of the things I could do is create a business that's anchored online. Okay, well, what do I want to create? And then it's that reverse engineering, essentially. You create the vision. How do I get the vision? How do I make that reality? Who do I have to become to live that life? What are the things I have to do every day to get there? And then you incorporate those things into your life. You have to get into action. Once you have the vision and you can feel inside the right direction for you to move in, get into action. Because the purpose here, again, it's a learning process. You want to experiment. You want to try. The only way you're going to know if this is the right thing for you is to lean into it and try it. That's it. And if you're like, actually, that looked a lot cooler than it is in execution, that's not for you. And that's cool. Try the next thing. We get so stuck on who we are as people and what's supposed to happen in our lives. And if you've experienced a big change or a loss, this life altering experience, you've gone through some hard things, you know that sometimes the plan goes to shit. Sometimes what you thought was going to happen, not even close, not even in the neighborhood. Plans change. So you have this vision, you kind of walk it backwards, right? Reverse engineer it. Who do I need to be? You start doing these things, start trying these things, bringing this stuff into your life. But again, don't get caught up in the how. That's the one thing. Don't get caught up in the how. Plans change. You know this. You have been through hard things. So welcome the detours. Explore the unexpected takes you. Be open to the opportunity. If you're in a challenging place emotionally, this is a low risk way of exploring how you want to feel and what that might look like. It's an experimentation process. And if you hit on some things during this process that make you feel really curious or even spark like a wanting, a desire in you, just follow the curiosity because you don't know what's coming next. When we're grieving, when we're going through hard things, we might catastrophize. Picture all the worst case scenarios because some worst case scenario already happened. So more must be coming. We're waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is your mind trying to establish control. We can't predict the future. We may think we can. We might be pretty sure how it's going to play out. But the truth is you can't. We cannot do that. Follow your curiosity. Be open to wherever it might lead you. Because the thing is, grief transforms us. I say I'm a transformational coach. I specialize in grief. I say I'm a transformational coach, not because your grief needs to be transformed. There's nothing wrong with your grief, but grief transforms us. So we can sit back and let that happen and let it drag us wherever it's going to drag us and put us in whatever mood it's going to put us in that day. Or we can be active and intentional in creating whatever's next. And that is hard. It's really, really hard. I know because I've had a lot of loss in my life. My mom currently has lung cancer. And there are days when I start to imagine a world without her in it. I just want to lay in bed. I don't want to get up. I don't want to do whatever I'm supposed to do or committed to do that day. When I start thinking about that, I want to cry. I just want to curl up into a ball and pretend that that's not reality. And I'm not saying not to feel your feelings. I'm not saying not to move that emotional energy through your body. I have very conscious practices to do that. I'm just saying that we have a choice to play with possibility and create a life we love. Even though hard things have happened, hard things are happening, more hard things are going to happen. And we can still be active participants, even when it's hard, even when it feels impossible. And we can create something else. We can create something new. We can lean into new experiences. We can evolve and we can grow and we can change. Again, if you're in acute grief, it's brand new, fresh pain, and you're thinking about surviving, it's probably not the conversation for you. But if you're a bit further along in your journey and you're starting to kind of like poke your head up and wonder, like, what else? What's next? I think I'm going to go outside today. Want to take a walk. Might call some friends, see if I can get some lunch. You know, like that possibility kind of starts banging around your head a little bit. Try this practice. Just see what it does for you. For me, this is a practice I return to when I feel disconnected from the vision of my life because hard things happen. And just because something already happened doesn't mean more things aren't going to happen. And when those things happen, again, it kind of turns your vision for yourself, for your life on its head. So re-explore what's now possible, even though those things have happened. So this is a practice I return to. I have found it hugely helpful when I kind of feel like I'm going through the motions. I'm not super connected to my life. I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. There's some type of disconnect there. I'm out of alignment. So this kind of helps me get back into a place where I can see the big picture vision of my life. I may not know how I'm going to get there. Don't know what the journey is going to look like, but I have an idea in my mind of where I'm going. And in the day-to-day, that could be really helpful. I hope you try this. If you do, let me know how it went for you. I hope this brings some excitement, some joy, some possibility into your life, especially if you're in a time where you really need that. I know that this practice does that for me. I just want to thank you for listening. I really appreciate every single person that tunes in. It will never cease to amaze me that I sit in my house and I'm talking to a microphone and there are people on the other side that actually listen to it. That's pretty incredible. And I think will always be incredible. So thank you. I hope that you have an amazing week. I hope you are able to take some time for yourself. Until next time. That's it for today's episode, my friends. Thanks so much for joining me on the Living with Loss podcast. Please like and follow the show so you don't miss an episode. If you're looking for more grief support, grab my free guide, 5 Essential Tools for Immediate Relief from Grief, even if you don't think that's possible. Head on over to adriancrowley.com and download it. Remember, you may not have chosen all the changes or losses in your life, but you get to choose what happens next. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Until then, have a fantastic week.